Okay, Charles, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with TAGT?
Yes, I'd been Killeen, then I went to Baylor and worked on my doctorate and was a headmaster of a private school, and then came back to Killeen as assistant superintendent for instruction. Superintendent asked me when he interviewed me, how much do you know about gifted education and how much do you know about middle school concept? It was just beginning, the middle school concept. Some legislation for gifted was just emerging. People were really getting fired up about it. And I said, I don't know a lot, but I'll learn. And so I got a call from Jimmy Jean Owen. She was the Region 12 coordinator for gifted. And she called me Charlie. She said, Charlie, we're going to Corpus Christi. I said, why? She said, it's a gifted conference. I want you to get involved in this and know more about it. And she told me when it was. So I said, that's Friday night, Jimmy Jean, in Killeen. That's a football game Friday night. That's big time. I can't go. Charlie, I'm coming by. I'm going to pick you up. We're going to Corpus for the conference. I went. Jimmy Jean was pretty powerful. She was great, too, to support Gifted Ed. Great leader. So I went to Corpus. La Quinta Inn, I believe, was the first site. In the room we had, the columns were all over. It was very difficult to see the head table and see the speakers. You had to look around columns. And there were not a whole lot of people there. June Cox was elected president, first president of TAGT, and some really great people I enjoyed meeting and so forth. And so when we got back, Jimmy Jean said, you're not getting involved in this. And one thing led to another. I went to the conferences and learned more about it for our district, and that began my journey with TAGT.
Excellent. Can you tell us a little bit about those early days of TAGT, what it was like as volunteers to be running an organization, and then kind of what you remember of Laura and her time as the executive director?
Yeah, I think the strength of TAGT came in the very formative years because Philip Gonzalez was a parent. He followed June Cox, and that impressed me. I remember, here's a parent giving tremendous time, had 2 children, giving tremendous time to an organization to get it off the ground. And that was the beginning of that relationship between parents. In Killeen, I can tell you, that's where our support came. It was bonding with parents whose kids were needing that kind of program. And so that kind of began the work of getting involved in TAGT. Laura Allard, I consider, well, June Cox, certainly the founder and first president, was amazing. Then Laura Allard, the little lady, little slender, tiny lady, but she was dynamite. And I've never seen the passion of a person as much as Laura Allard for gifted children. And Laura emerged certainly as a leader, became the executive director of TAGT. And in the early years, I remember the San Antonio Conference. That was the 4th annual conference. I was chairperson of that one. We had it at the Hilton on the river. Palacio del Rio, I believe is the name of it. And we decided Laura was the spur of all of the scholarship concept. And she said, we need to start the scholarship and we'll do it here. And we're not have people donate, contribute, get their school districts committed. And really that was the beginning of TAGT getting involved in scholarships. And where it is today is truly amazing. But back then, it was the beginning. And Laura was a dear friend. You know, worked with her on the Sid Richardson project, I attribute much of that early success that built to what y'all have today at TAGT because of Laura Allard. I consider her a giant in gifted ed.
Do you have any favorite stories or any favorite memories of the early days of TAGT?
Just the struggles. And trying to build an organization where there wasn't a lot of support in the public schools, unfortunately, for that. And so to get it off the ground, the state was beginning to move toward legislation, which was an early remembrance of mine. Charlie Evans was a state representative from Fort Worth. Charlie Evans came to all the meetings. He was the guy that introduced the legislation. And in fact, as kind of a side to that, Evie Hyatt, who became a president, worked for Charlie. And she said, my inspiration was Charlie Evans, who was involved in gifted ed. That was her beginning. And I remember him coming. I can remember his face. I can remember exactly his mannerisms. He was a great friend, really helped on everything. Also, the support of Bill Kirby, Commissioner of Education. Bill Kirby came to the conferences. He didn't just make a little handshake and leave. Bill Kirby interacted with the people. Great leader. And that support of the Commissioner of Education and legislators like Charles Evans really was a savior because that got the groundwork that was needed to make this organization and really make the program in the state legislation become a part of the state concept.
Was there any initiatives or things that you did while you were president that you would like to share or talk about?
I don't remember any particular initiatives other than trying to enlist more superintendents in the concept. I know when I'd go to superintendent meetings, I would talk about it and try to get them to the conferences. We made special effort to invite superintendents and get them to come with some of their people to the conferences. And of course, just the continuation of what I had already begun, the scholarships concept, working on state legislation, seeing that it was in line with what the belief of the leaders of gifted ed. I always said that I didn't consider myself gifted, but I believed in the children across the state that were lacking in programs that would meet their needs. And I had some great memories of people in Killeen where that made such a huge difference with them as parents when we began to have the program.
Why do you think it was important for you as a superintendent to be involved with working with this special population?
Well, I think it sent a message, that of all the programs we had, I felt good about in Killeen. We had some really strong programs. We're a very diverse school district, very diverse. We had strong bilingual programs, especially at deaf. We had some really excellent deaf ed programs and meeting the needs of all the youngsters. And that was one area I felt we had not been meeting their needs. And Ann Wink was such a leader. Any success of the Killeen schools in gifted ed, I attribute to Ann Wink, not to Charles Patterson. She would work with principals. They responded to her, which was a key. Getting the principals committed was a key. Once you had your superintendent at least accepting of the legislation, then those principals became, and she had the knack of working with principals, keeping them happy. And so I think those successes really played a role. As superintendent, I felt that was important across the state to have some superintendents deeply involved.
Yeah. Did you think in those early days that TAGT would continue to flourish and grow to 40 years? What were your thoughts on gifted education then, and did you think that it would be something?
Probably so, yes. And it was because of the leadership. And Ann Shaw, Ann's another name I want to pitch in there. Ann Shaw was at TEA, and the support of the agency was essential to get them involved and supportive because they actually were key to success. And Ann was a gracious lady, just a quiet spirit, committed, passionate about gifted ed, and her leadership at the agency really was an inspiration. So then it followed with some other great leaders. I mean, you could go down the list, and I'm not trying to name them because I'd leave out somebody, but they're dear friends today, and that's why I'm sorry I'm going to miss the past president's luncheon. But they are just truly committed. They've always had committed, passionate people in the leadership. And so I knew that organizations like this can flourish. And to see the crowds at the conventions and the breakout sessions for parents and teachers, and that has been very rewarding to watch the organization flourish. I've not followed this closely in recent years, although I've tried to go to some of the conferences and meet with people. But yeah, probably it was a dream, and probably I believed that that dream would continue. A story that I'll share about the importance of those beginnings. In Killeen, we implemented the program and had, I said Ann Wink was a teacher then. We weren't even able to have a leader, and then quickly she became our leader. I got a position named where she could serve in that. But as a teacher, we had a young man, and when I was speaking, I'd go speak at gifted conferences and so forth, even after I was president. And David Shoemaker was his name. He was a student in Killeen, and David went to MIT. As far as I know, he's the only Killeen student that ever went to MIT, got his master's there, and got his doctorate from MIT. Brilliant young man, but a very down-to-earth, personable young man. And so I wrote him when I began to make speeches to find out his concept of what Gifted Ed did for him. And he wrote me this beautiful letter that I still have in my mementos. And he made this statement: education was not that exciting for me. I was in the 3rd grade. It was kind of boring. It was not exciting. But I got a class in the gifted program with Ann Wink, and it was never the same for me after that. That was his inspiration. And he went into business. He's worked for great firms. Just a very wonderful parents. One was a teacher, one was a secretary in an elementary school. Very young, but this young man, it made the difference. And I could tell other stories about parents that would come to me and say it saved my daughter's inspiration for school and so forth. So I think it lives on through y'all and all the great leaders of TAGT.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we finish up about THT or your time there?
I think TAGT always took the concept of the importance of conferences and getting people in that were really well known in gifted ed. Like I said, those early conferences, we were able to attract James Gallagher and Marvin Gold and some of those early leaders, Joseph Renzulli. That was the big, I mean, we had these names that we would kind of swoon over. And I felt in the company of giants when I was with them. And so the whole experience I had of being involved in gifted ed, I look back on my career and I say, I feel that experience and being involved with the people that were passionate about gifted ed and providing programs for young people and activities for young people that would meet their needs was one of the great journeys of my educational career. I'm very blessed to have been a part of it.
Well, it was interesting times. I was lucky enough to be in one of the first gifted programs in a really large district in Texas, Killeen ISD, and worked for Charles Patterson. And so he was one of the early presidents of TAGT and actually worked with the group that started the whole organization. And some of my greatest memories of those days was, first of all, we got to go to every conference because he supported the association, and he would send like 50, 60 people every year. And but the most fun part was when it came time for the conference, we didn't have an office staff. Laura Allen was running the organization out of her house, and so the people who were president, every time somebody, whoever was elected president, it was kind of their job to get their district or their university or whatever to support getting the conference ready. And so literally we would go after work over to his office. He was director of curriculum instruction, big office, and we would type, because we didn't have computers. We would type and run off and fold programs and do name badges and everything. Killeen sponsored that and paid for that so we could do it. And the conferences weren't huge then, but still, it was a lot of work. But it was a neat time to be a teacher of gifted in Colleen because we were really close and we were a team, and then we could, we went to the conference. And and of course he insisted that I run for the board a little bit later after he had been president, and after the organization had grown and I became director of advanced academics, he said, you need to run for the board. So I ran as Region 12 representative, and I was elected, and not surprisingly, because most of the members in Region 12 were from Colleen. So, but that was an amazing time for me. Laura Allard had retired, and Connie McClendon had come on as the director, and it was the time when we were looking at the bill to mandate gifted ed in Texas, and are keeping that alive and making it stronger. And so those were really exciting days, and Connie was just the absolute perfect person they could have chosen. She did not have a background in gifted education, but she was a teacher and had gifted children. And honestly, the core group of that organization were parents. Laura Allard was a parent, that's why it got started. Most of the people that worked with Charles, that were officers, were parents. And then the teachers got more involved. And so Connie was enthusiastic. She was well connected. She had worked at Texas Education Agency at one time. She had worked in university. She tells the greatest stories about times when we were fighting to keep things, not to get the funding increase, not to have it cut. And she was the one, it was during her days and when we were on the board, that we formed the tree, we called it, the phone call tree, where if we knew there was something going on, we all called certain people, and then it spread out, and then other people called other people. And she told a story one time about because she was kind of the lobbyist at that time, we couldn't afford to hire anybody extra, that she got a call from a senator from San Angelo, and he said, Connie, you've got to call them off. And she said, call who off? And he said, those parents, those GT parents. And she said, what do you mean? He said, I'm just trying to get on an airplane to come back to Austin today, and I had the lady that was taking my ticket saw who I was, and she said, now listen, I'm not letting you on this plane if you don't promise that you are going to vote for that bill for gifted ed. And he said, you got to call them off. So we had a very ferocious group of people then, and a really good organization. I think that still works well for TAGT today. And I stayed on that board for 10 years. I think I had every office that there was. I remember that when we started doing the conference, the out of the office instead of in Killeen ISD, we had the person who was president-elect, it was their job to organize and put this thing together, because we still had when we had Connie and her assistant, that we didn't have people on staff. And so they kept wanting me to run for president, and I said, I'm not going to if I have to do that conference. So, because I worked as an officer with people like Ann Truell, and I remember us having to lay out all of these sessions on the floor in a hotel room, and physically, manually plot which ones were going to be in what place. And it took like hours and hours. So we were up until the wee hours of the morning. So that job was really hard. Then once we hired someone in the office to help Connie with that, then I said, okay, I'll run. So then I ran for president. And when I was president, it was really the heyday of, I think it was 95, and it was, gifted ed was really, TAGT was really growing. We had 7,000 or 8,000 members, and we would have 5,000 to 6,000 at the conference. And because we had deck visits then, the district compliance visits, where we actually had teams from the agency that would go out to school districts, and while they were checking compliance in other things, they also checked if you were in compliance on gifted, and they would check if teachers were trained. That was a big deal. So, because the 30-hour training was a mandate. And then 6 hours every year update, which we actually had sessions that were coded like that so that teachers could come and get it. And I think we were in Houston at the convention center, and I want to say our attendance that year was 5,000 to 6,000. I was scared to death to get up on that podium and look at that field of people. They had to use an exhibit hall because the ballrooms weren't big enough to put everybody in. But luckily, as Connie told me, I couldn't see anybody because the lights were in my face. But I kept standing there going, I don't know how a girl from a little country town ever got in this place, but it's exciting, it's wonderful. And I worried because when I left the agents, when I left board, I then became the first. I left and went back to Killeen for a few years, and then Connie asked me to apply for the associate director job, which they wanted to bring on to work more directly with schools, to give more support to coordinators and new coordinators. And also, we put in a system for approving staff development. Like if you were going to bring in a consultant to your district, you were going to offer a staff development on in-house, or you were going to say you were another association, and you were going to say that if you came to our association, you could get some credit in gifted because we're going to offer some. We had to vet who was presenting, what they were doing, and making sure it was in line with what we had in the 30 hours, what was required. And that was my job. So I had a lot of papers I looked at for a long time. But that kind of brought back the validity of training, because there were too many people out there that were saying, oh yes, I know gifted ed, and they were offering trainings that really weren't good. So that was, I think, a big time for the association. And when Connie retired and I left there, I went to TEA and worked as director of gifted, and still kept very tied to TAGT because that's where my heart was. And I worried about them, and I would call the office when I was worried about something. And when I knew we were in danger of losing accountability, I called and I said, it's gonna kill conference attendance when that happens. And sure enough, it did. So even though the conferences are great and fabulous, districts aren't going to spend money on something that's not required or not checked, even though it's required, not checked. So I think I feel older than I am, because I feel like I have watched this association and the whole movement in gifted ed from the early days in Texas. And I've been lucky enough to be there at the top, at the bottom, and then the rebirth. I'm excited about what's happening at TAGT right now, and I'm excited about how the past presidents have stayed so involved and love the association. That's not usual in groups like this, but I think we all have a passion. And while I've done other things besides gifted since then, my passion will always be for gifted kids.
Thank you.
So in 1989, when the Texas State Plan was developed in collaboration with TAGT and TEA, that plan provided rules and regulations and standards for school districts in implementing gifted education in the state. The schools now had to serve children in kindergarten through grade 12 in the core content areas, and that provided the momentum for the development of programs and teacher preparation for teachers in the state in terms of gifted education. The TAGT then, their membership rose. We had large numbers at our conferences because people were interested in this new area of gifted education. The state also created what they called DEC and DEC Plus, DEC meaning visits where state representatives would come out and review how districts were aligned to the rules and regulations at the state level. And DEC Plus was for those districts who wanted to be recognized as exemplary. It was really not until the early 2000s that gifted education was not held as accountable. Districts weren't, because they didn't have visits from the state. And that then, of course, led to some decrease in consistency and quality of programs.
Casual. Okay, so Susan, tell me about how you guys got Ray Bradbury that year.
Right, that was kind of serendipitous. There was a earthquake in Northridge, California, and I noticed that Ray Bradbury was presenting to a technology group, and they had to cancel that conference. So I went to Connie McClendon. I was the person identifying speakers for the conference. And I said, do you think we might be able to get Ray Bradbury to come to the conference this year as a speaker? So Connie said, sure, I'll contact him, and she did. And Ray Bradbury came for almost practically nothing. In fact, I think we paid him $1,000. And not only did he speak to all of our participants, but he also spoke to all the high school students at that conference. So we had maybe 10,000 people that heard Ray Bradbury, and he was fantastic. Spoke with no notes, just a wonderful presenter. So Benny Hickerson, when she became the immediate, or the president-elect, she decided she would have Ray Bradbury come back again. And he stayed around after his session and signed books as long as anybody had a book for him to sign. Very special person.
Thank you. I feel very much welcome, and I'm very happy to be here. Before I get to my comments, I just want to acknowledge the horrific tragedy that's going on in San Bernardino, California. My message to you today is one of aspiration, one of hope, one of giving kids, your sons and daughters, your students, wings so that they can grow and contribute in the future. Those messages will always, always be stronger than any messages of hate.
longevity and talent, keeping it up and keeping it going. I can think of no one who better embraces this feeling of fun and joy than Johann Sebastian Bach. So I'm going to play a little Bach for you. This is unaccompanied Bach from his Suite Number 3. It's a very uplifting piece. You can kind of imagine what Bach might have had in mind when he was writing this. You can kind of close your eyes if you like and see where the music takes you, or you can watch. And I will try not to screw it up.
Good morning. Try it again. Good morning. And welcome to the second day, well, for some of it's third and fourth day, but for the second day of our conference. I was speaking to a group last night, and I commented on the fact that I had been to NAGC, the national organization, a couple weeks back, and it was a wonderful, wonderful conference. But the energy that I felt yesterday morning was more amazing than anything I felt at NAGC. We are blessed with so many people who care so much and are so enthusiastic and do the work of making sure that the children of Texas, and this year we've had some visitors from out of state too, who come here to make sure they have sharpened their saws and are ready to go back and touch lives of gifted children. Again, if I missed you yesterday, my name is Ann STUDDARD, and for the next about 3 hours, I am the president of TAGT.
Dr. James Webb. He is the nationally recognized psychologist and expert on gifted education who consults with schools, programs, and individuals about social and emotional needs of gifted and talented children. In 1981, Dr. Webb established SING, which is Supporting Emotional Needs of Gifted Children, a national nonprofit organization that provides information, training, conferences, and workshops and he remains as chair of Sing's Professional Advisory Committee. He also serves as the president of Great Potential Press, and you can find that down in our exhibit hall. He's a frequent keynote and workshop speaker at state and national conventions. He has also appeared in his spare time on Good Morning America, CBS Sunday Morning, CNN, and NPR, National Public Radio. He has been honored by the American Psychological Association and the Mensa Education and Research Foundation. He has served on the board of directors for the National Association for Gifted Children and was president of the American Association for Gifted Children. He has been a professor and associate dean of the School of Professional Psychology at Wright State University and associate clinical professor at the Wright State University School of Medicine. He has been in private practice as well as in various consulting positions with clinics and hospitals. He is the lead author of 5 books and several DVDs about gifted children, including Guiding the Gifted Child, a practical source for parents and teachers, and A Parent's Guide to Gifted Children. And I will tell you personally, as a GT program coordinator, whenever I needed anything on social and emotional needs of kids, he was the first person I always turned to in Great Potential Press. It's a wealth of information. He was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and he graduated from Rhodes College and received his doctorate degree from the University of Alabama. Dr. Webb and his wife are parents of 6 daughters. Will you join me in welcoming the man, Dr. Webb? Thank you very much. We're excited to have you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here at the Texas conference. I was commenting to Ann how smoothly and seamlessly it seems the conference has gone, and yet you know, as I know, that these conferences don't just fall lightly like manna from heaven. There's a lot of organization that has gone into these. It's kind of, in terms of challenge, it's right up there with organizing a bucket full of minnows. But it's gone wonderfully smoothly, and it's a pleasure for me to be here.
Good morning. On a beautiful, sunny Houston day, this is amazing. That we have this weather, and so this is the place to be. We're inside and warm and dry, and thank you for being here this morning. We appreciate that you have made the choice to be here, that you've made arrangements with family, with students, that you put it in your budget, and you're here. And on behalf of TAGT, we welcome you to our 32nd annual convention and hope that it will be, if it's your first, it'll be the first of many. If it's not your first, we look for your continued support, because this is where we come to talk to each other and learn from experts and take things back for our children. I'm Cecelia Boswell. I'm president of TAGT until 10 o'clock this morning. And so I welcome you to this. We want to make sure that you understand that we have corporate sponsorships that really do help put on this conference and all the conferences during the year and all the work of TAGT. Pearson, Proofrock Press, and Summer Institute for the Gifted are our first 3 that have chosen to make this, this effort for TAGT.
Well, I started with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, and I knew nothing about gifted. By the end of the year, the children taught me about gifted and had wonderful experiences with all of those. And then my students were teachers when I went to the Education Service Center, and I began to watch it in action as adults.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I started a similar way, Cecelia. I started working with 5th graders, and over 15 years really learned what it meant to be a gifted student and what their needs were. And then the exciting thing is, as I moved forward in my career, I got to begin to work with teachers that were doing their master's degree, and they have impacted my life so much because of their passion for these students and their willingness to come back and study and learn more so they can be better at what they do. And it just enriched my life so much because I felt like it enlarged my impact. And I've known those people now for years, and they've become not just students but friends and colleagues, and I've grown from that experience. It's been really enriching.
That's the whole thing, is we've grown as much or more than our students, whether they're 5th graders or they're working on a master's or they're teaching daily.
Yeah, and now, because we consult, we've kind of gotten to reach even further, that we reach teachers across the state and really across the nation, and administrators, yeah.
At first, for me, there were no challenges because it was new and people were interested and they were curious about it. And I remember my first conference with TAGT, and there were 7,000 people at that conference. Oh, probably about 1996 or 7. And so then I thought then everybody was going to be happy about gifted, and here we are still working to make sure that gifted children have the opportunities that they deserve and need.
Yeah, and I think for me over my career is just how the interest and passion about gifted ed kind of ebbs and flows. One of the topics in one of the classes I teach is looking at the history of gifted education. And it's kind of a 10-year cycle of interest to sagging interest. And to watch that over time, we feel like we make progress and then it falls again, and we're just at the same point, and continuing to have to fight for funding and making sure it's part of the law. And it's an interesting field in that it really it has a federal mandate, but it doesn't have funding to support it at the federal level, so we have to continue to fight. But even that interest in even doing research in the field kind of ebbs and flows.
Yes, and I think it's been interesting. It's been a challenge, but a good one, now that we are really focusing on underserved populations, our twice exceptional, and pulling in our special ed friends and letting people recognize that there are gifted kids, whether they're in poverty or they're dyslexic or whatever the exceptionality might be. Now that we are approaching that and still getting the funding and getting those things that help us move forward.
Right.
Well, let's start with me, because what's interesting is when I was president is when we voted to change the board structure. And that was just the first vote. And I was a little dubious because I wanted to make sure that everyone was still represented. And yet we moved forward with it. And then 5 presidents later,
we're finishing the implementation of that. And so we actually had a conversation this morning about that she was kind of the beginning of that, and then I got to kind of wrap it up and to get to the point that we actually were looking at how we engage committees better, how we make sure they have strong chairs of the committees, and how we have a structure to train people into that role. And so really over those 5 years through several presidents, we got to see that change happen. I was the first president that served a 2-year term, and that was a transition of what does that look like and what does that mean, and how do we implement that. And it was exciting because one of the issues with having one-year terms is presidents were saying, I just get started and my term is over. And so I was the first one that got to really implement so many things. So as we talked about it today, it's like a lot of things happened, but it was because I had a 2-year term. Because during that, we rebranded, we changed the website. It was the first time we started really getting into social media as strongly as we are. We really changed even the division and the committee structure and made that more vibrant and robust. And so it really, I think, gelled the idea of it is a stronger presidency with a 2-year term. You can really make things happen. Where Cecelia served a 1-year term and did important things, but if she had had another year, she could have seen more of that be implemented. So I got to be there at a really exciting time. The rebranding process was interesting and exciting because we went through really a creative process to do that and had some people guide us through that, and that was really fun. And now to see that being used on all print material, on web material, and see the beauty of that rebrand and how it helps really help people know who our organization is. It's really positive. It's a positive presence in our community, and that was fun to be a part of. But then we talked about, and you can share some more about this after I do, you know, what happens after you finish?
Yes.
You know, you finish presidency and then you serve that year as past president, and kind of then what? And you come to that first conference after that and you think, okay, where's my place? And you have to kind of figure that out again of, you know, I'm not going to serve on the board again. I really don't think I need to chair a committee anymore. So how do I have an impact? And, you know, part of that is through presenting and sharing things. For me, I've had to be really intentional about making sure I get to know the new people coming into the organization, because when I come back, it's like reunion. I want to see all the people that I worked with and all the people that I knew and all the past presidents, and I have to be really intentional about introducing myself to somebody new to the organization and helping them see the possibility of what it can be for them. And so I'm real purposeful in that.
Yeah. And one way we do that is through making presentations. There was never a doubt in my mind that I would attend TAGT after I was president. It's home, and it's what we do, and where we get our energy for another short while. But when you make a presentation, then not only do you see those people that you've known, but you begin to see the new people, and I was getting excited because we would lament that, oh, there's no one coming up. What will happen? Yes, there are plenty coming up, and they're smart and they're good, and they're as passionate as we ever were.
And that's fun. That's really fun.
We thank you. We thank TAGT for the opportunity. Wouldn't have missed it.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a great experience for us.
Yes, yes.
Welcome to the second general session of the 34th Annual TAGT Professional Development Conference. We hope that yesterday was filled with exciting opportunities to reconnect with friends and colleagues, but more importantly, to be motivated and inspired by the insightful work and talent of your peers. Today is certain to be another great day of learning and exploration as we continue to consider all that Gifted 3.0 means.
Right. So it's our birthday, and we have 40 years, and just, you know, what was kind of your favorite TAGT memory, and what was, what do you want to say to remind us of our history of TAGT?
There are so many things. TAGT has been the highlight of my time in my career. It's someplace I've always been able to go where when I walk the halls of the convention center or the hotel, I can't walk 10 steps without hugging somebody.
Yeah, I mean, you're a hugger. So.
I am a hugger. But I remember early on the food functions where we would have, like the coordinators division would have a big meal, and I would look at the people that were sitting towards the front that were officers and big names in the state and think, I want to give back like that. I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I remember my very first board meeting, I sat down between Jan Fall and Mary Christopher, and we have been lifelong friends now. And so it's just, it's a place where you can go to learn. It's a place where you can go to have your cup filled. It's a group that embraces diversity of thought and unity of purpose. And it's just it's a unique organization that I think is highly supportive of those who work to fulfill its mission.
Yeah, and I think that you, like I was looking back through all the past president files recently, and you were one of the youngest past presidents when you served, and I think that's just testimony to how enthusiastic you are about what you do and how dedicated you are to this, and also how much of a leader you are that you pushed forward. So I thought that was really cool to see that.
One of the things that I had to live up to is in Round Rock ISD, every director of advanced academics, coordinator of gifted, has been a past president, has been president.
Wow, really?
So Amanda Batson started, and then Peggy Kress, and then Wayne Cragen, and then me.
So you were like,
I didn't
knew
really
that was
have
your
a
pathway.
choice. It was destiny.
Well, we were glad you did it, though.
Thank you. Me too.
Okay. Thanks so much for talking with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. If my smile gets a little extra big today, you'll just have to put up with it because I am so honored to be with you. This is a room full of people who we've just nurtured each other for so long. Some of you don't know that because you're young. Let's stand up. You've been sitting too long. Some of you have been here for already over an hour. Stand on up and stretch for a minute before we get going. Watch out. Don't cold cock the person next to you. Now, while you're standing, while you've got that thing going there, let's introduce ourselves to one another. So whoever you happen to be standing by, especially if they're an old grouch who needs a smile this morning, just introduce yourself. We'll be doing some talking later, and you'll need someone you know to work with, so say hi. That's right, give them a hug. Feels good. All right, sit on down. That was enough of stretching for now. It's time for torture sitting time.
To the stage, TAGT Executive Director, J.J. Colburn.
Thank you, Michelle. It's such a great privilege for me to serve as the Executive Director of TAGT. I'm deeply proud of the work that our association does to connect and empower educators and parents to meet the unique needs of gifted learners. We continue to do that together through outstanding programs such as this annual conference. Gifted 3.0 encourages us to consider tools that are now available through new technologies and strategies. As an organization, TAGT is also looking to the future and working to diversify and broaden services and resources. I am pleased to share that TAGT is working to serve parents more effectively through the creation of the Parent and Community Advocates Division, and parent membership in TAGT is up 30%. That deserves a round of applause.
Gifted and talented students from every cultural background see the world in unique ways and are developing minds that just might discover innovative answers to the most challenging questions of their generation. The Texas Association for the Gifted and Talented connects and empowers you to meet the unique needs of the gifted, and your support is essential. TAGT provides tools and resources to inspire students to think beyond and fulfill their potential. We create connections among diverse stakeholders who guide gifted students. And we shape opportunities by leading relevant conversations to promote awareness of the limitless possibilities represented in our students. As a powerful voice for the gifted community and a dynamic resource for educators and parents, TAGT continues to build on the strong foundation of our past and the promise of our future. Join us as we move forward and positively impact the lives of the gifted and talented.
Since 1982, TAGT has been able to award more than $1 million in scholarships to students, educators, and parents to support training and enrichment opportunities. In the last year alone, we have been able to provide more than $50,000 in scholarships to gifted students and educators. In order to keep giving at this pace, we need your help, as TAGT scholarships are fully funded by supporters like you.
Just think, if everyone in this room who cares about gifted students donated just $10 to the scholarship fund, we would generate more than $20,000 in just one day. We urge you to stop by the store located in the exhibit hall and make a tax-deductible donation today. Last year, our members donated more than $10,000 to the scholarship fund. Let's generate even more this year.
Hi, I'd like to personally invite you to attend this year's TAGT 2016 Annual Conference. It's being held in Dallas again, and we're real excited. If you're a veteran or a first-time attendee, we welcome you. There are going to be great sessions and two wonderful keynote speakers that I know you're not going to want to miss. So come join us. I know you'll want to take your learning to the next level. If you haven't already registered, please do so. I look forward to seeing you in December.
My favorite part about coming to Gift Ed is actually learning all the new and the different things that I can do with kindergarten.
I'm most excited about bringing ideas back that can help enhance our STEM initiatives, our college and career readiness initiatives.
My favorite part about Gift Ed is stealing other teachers' ideas.
I love being a gifted educator because I feel like I get to change the world.
If you're not a member, you should be.
Thank you for joining us at Gift Ed in another year connecting minds and empowering futures.